Chapter 158 Senior Sister Juzi. Sun Zwen could tell that Huo Yuao's eyes had changed a little after their 3 high fives. Huo Yuao was no longer a child in his eyes, as he could clearly feel that Huo Yuao wasn't just saying all this for the fun of it. The determination and self-confidence in his eyes was truly stunning and remarkable. All right, then we shall start today's lesson. Hopefully, I can give you even more pleasant surprises today. However, I have to say that you can't take too long to devise 10 different research breakthroughs, or I may no longer have that hysterical passion to achieve my dreams when I'm too old. Sun Zwen was stubborn and passionate about soul tools, but that didn't mean he wasn't rational and intelligent about other things. Huo Yuao's research was enough to move him, but it wasn't enough to pull him over without conditions and prerequisites. Huo Yuao nodded and smiled. Let's begin our lesson. Teacher Sun, I have already passed your assessment, and I am your student now. Sun Zwen nodded and said, all right then, let's start. I can tell that your foundations are solid and reliable, and you are a unique spirit type soul master. I want to discuss some principles and concepts before I elaborate more about techniques in forging soul tools. Once your principles and concepts are right, you won't digress from the right path so easily when you're doing deeper research. Tell me, what is a soul tool? Sun Zwen's face was serious and solemn. Huo Yuao replied, they are tools activated and directed by a soul master's soul power. They can be used as weapons, or tools to support people's daily lives or their work. This should be the model answer, and he had known that ever since he started learning how to forge soul tools. However, Sun Zwen shook his head disappointedly when he heard these words. I have to say that Shrek's views and perception of soul tools is simply too backward. I will give you a new definition, you must memorize it. What are soul tools? Soul tools have nothing to do with soul masters. The meaning of the existence and advancement of soul tools lies in catalyzing human society's evolution. That means research and development in soul tools is intended to advance and further societal development, so that humans can enjoy a stronger and more fulfilling existence. I have always believed that, one day in the near future, humankind will be able to use soul tools to dominate and subdue all other species, perhaps even other worlds that are not our own. Our vision may be too insignificant and trivial for now, but humans are also constantly growing and evolving in tandem with our advancements in soul tools. Do you believe that one day, humans without even a threat of soul power can use soul tools to hunt and kill 10,000-year-old beasts? Huo Yuao paid attention and remembered everything that Sun Zwen said to him. His current impression of Sun Zwen was similar to the same awe and amazement that Sun Zwen had felt when Huo Yuao had forged the Juga divine crossbow. Sun Zwen had flipped his knowledge and understanding of soul tools with just a few simple words, and this was entirely because of the gap in their standards. Human evolution and development has been extremely slow over the past few thousand years. I believe that the Duloi continent's sluggish development would have continued if it hadn't collided with the Sun Moon continent. Even now, the 3 empires native to the Duloi continent haven't entirely taken soul tools seriously. Without considering top-tier soul masters, I dare say that the Sun Moon Empire is entirely capable of using soul tools to dominate and unify the entire continent. There is already a rift in the levels of civilization. Sun Zwen's speech gave the impression that he couldn't stand not saying staggering and startling things. However, our research and development in soul tools has reached a bottleneck. The reason is simple. Soul masters are the bottleneck. That is because research in soul tools began with the notion and purpose of soul masters using them, so soul power was required to activate them. Over the past few thousand years, every single piece of research has been channeled and focused on this aspect. This has created a worldwide malady, in that soul tools cannot be used on a large scale. Soul masters are ultimately the elites among humans, but they are still the minority, and normal citizens are still the majority. If soul tools cannot enter normal citizens' lives, then we will never truly realize the dream of advancing humankind and transcending generational boundaries. Mightier soul tools required stronger soul masters to use them, and this moronic logic has led to the stagnation of soul tool research. Our current research direction is how do we enable normal citizens to use soul tools? This is the reason why I was so amazed and bewildered when I saw the soul tool that you just created. Even though you haven't completely solved the problem, you have allowed soul masters to act as a vector for charging the soul tool. Once it's charged, the soul tool that you have forged can be used by normal citizens. This is what I'm most concerned about, and not your soul tool's force. In other words, this soul tool's most important technology is about using gears and buttons so that the charge array can be used as a primer instead of soul power. Therefore, you should do everything you can to explore and research soul tools for civilian use if you wish to move me. The relatively more successful examples are currently limited to stationary soul tools. The only problem is that stationary soul tools are simply too expensive, and even the illustrious Virtue Hall rarely forges high-level stationary soul tools. To this day, the Sun Moon Empire has only equipped a single stationary soul tool regiment. Sun Zwen suddenly seemed to realize that he had misspoke, and he forced a laugh in exasperation. Pretend you didn't hear that last sentence. Huo Yuao smiled in understanding but said nothing, and only listened intently to Sun Zwen's explanation. Sun Zwen's mood and interest had been completely triggered by now, and he went on and on about his knowledge and understanding of soul tools, as well as some principles and concepts. Huo Yuao was like a dried-up sponge, and constantly absorbed all this information. He could imprint everything into his mind with impeccable accuracy due to his supernatural memory. Sun Zwen's research in regards to soul tools truly flabbergasted Huo Yuao. He was a Class 8 soul engineer, but the feeling he gave Huo Yuao was different from what he felt with Fan Yu. Fan Yu's style was stability, and Huo Yuao's foundations had become extremely sturdy under his guidance. Sun Zwen was the complete opposite. His mind was like a heavenly steed soaring through the skies, bold and imaginative. He was a soul engineer filled with creativity and vigor. His research was mostly unrelated to war, and certain principles and concepts gave Huo Yuao a sudden flash of insight. Some things that he didn't understand about soul tools, or some things that he just couldn't wrap his head around, were smoothed out and resolved by Sun Zwen's guidance in principles and concepts. Even though it couldn't be considered a complete resolution, he could at least see a clear path before him. This was also a soul engineer curriculum, but the gap had become increasingly conspicuous. Huo Yuao's learning in Shrek Academy was more about memorizing blueprints of soul tool formation arrays. Yet Sun Zwen didn't produce a single blueprint for him. He was merely explaining the innovative principles of soul tools. In Sun Zwen's words, a soul engineer teacher should never give his or her students rules and boxes to follow. Soul engineer teachers should be giving their students principles and concepts, and once their students obtained a sufficient foundation, they would use their understanding and principles and concepts along with their personal creativity to create soul tools that belong to themselves. This was the main reason why Huo Yuao amazed Sun Zwen when he made something of his own during the assessment. Huo Yuao felt as if he was relearning everything he knew about soul tools under Sun Zwen's guidance. His brain had been completely rewired at this point, and he would ask some questions from time to time, which Sun Zwen answered immediately without exception. Time seemed to flash by as an hour passed just like that. Sun Zwen spoke until even he was a little exhausted, but Huo Yuao was still as excited and lively as ever. One of the major advantages of being a spirit-type soul master. Creak. The lab door suddenly opened with a jarring creak and shook Huo Yuao out of his immersion in the ocean of knowledge as he subconsciously glanced towards the door. It was just a glance, but his eyes suddenly seemed to freeze, and he could no longer withdraw his gaze. There was a young woman standing by the door. She seemed a little drowsy-eyed, but her beauty made Huo Yuao lose his focus even though he had seen many pretty girls before. This young lady had long, flowing black hair. She looked to be between 17 and 18 years of age, her large and nimble eyes appearing a little nebulous. Her complexion was just too impressive, as not a single pore could be seen on her soft and tender skin, as if he could squeeze water out of her with just a single pinch. She wore a school uniform like everyone else, which brought out her relatively attractive figure. Perhaps she wasn't as pretty as Jiang Nanen's, but her lazy and naturally cute demeanor was riveting. You're early, teacher. What a rare sight. The young girl acted like she didn't see Huo Yuao at all, addressing Sun Zwen lazily. She walked over and sat down on the lab desk before she lay down on top of it, as if she wanted to take yet another nap. Ahem. Sun Zwen coughed dryly and said, "Stop sleeping, Juzi. Can't you see there's someone new here?" The young girl referred to as Juzi was still lying down. She waved her right hand lazily, as if she was swatting flies, and said, "Stop talking and let me sleep for a little while. You know what I was doing last night when I burned the midnight oil." Her soft and silky voice gave people a strange and tickly sensation in their hearts. Sun Zwen was a little exasperated and said, "Forget it. Don't mind her. She's just like that. Her name is Juzi, and she's also one of my students. You can call her senior sister from now on, or you can just address her by her name. She was researching soul tools last night, and she kept at a single experiment until midnight. That is the reason why she's only up at this hour. I only have 4 students. The other 3 are out to gain experience, and will probably only be back after a few days." Experience. Soul engineers also have to venture outside for experience. What kind of experience is that? Who are you? Asked curiously. Sun Wen replied, of course they need to have experience. Simply doing experiments inside a lab is not enough, and some research has to be tested in real life so that it can be improved, and better results obtained. I guided them through forging some soul tools before this, and they brought their soul tools out for experiments. You will have similar experiences in the days to come. Since you already have rank 40 soul power, you should go out and get your 4th soul ring as soon as possible. Even though I'm unwilling to admit it, soul engineers will dread the stagnation of their soul power the most, as powerful soul tools require a powerful soul master to wield them right now. Who are you? Forced to laugh and said, it's not like I'm delaying in getting another soul ring. Suitable spirit type soul beasts are just too rare. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have dragged it out this long. Sun Wen contemplated momentarily, then said, rare doesn't mean non-existent. Even though the Sun Moon Empire's overall soul beast quality may be inferior to that of the Great Stardow Forest near Shrek Academy, it holds true that different regions will have different types of soul beasts. I can accompany you to find a suitable soul ring. You can get one as long as you find an appropriate soul beast. Thank you, Teacher Sun. Who are you? Thanked him sincerely. While he wasn't wholly convinced that Sun Wen could take him to find a suitable soul beast, he could still appreciate his teacher's good intentions. Sun Wen glanced at the time and said, all right, it's getting late. We will stop here for today. In the meantime, you can think things over on your own. I can only teach you the principles. After that, your subsequent inventions and innovations are yours alone. Yes. Who are you? Nodded. Sun Wen sauntered beside Juzi and suddenly shouted, it's time to eat. Let's go. The shrimp crackers will be gone. This beautiful girl, who still had sleepy and dazed eyes just a moment ago, suddenly leapt to her feet. She raced out of the lab with a spring in her step while Hua Yua watched her, slack-jawed. Sun Wen laughed uncontrollably as he watched her mannerisms. It didn't take long before Juzi stomped furiously back into the lab. She raised her arm and held a sphere of yellow light towards Sun Wen, exclaiming, you lied to me. You lied to me again. I'm going to kill you. She tossed sphere after sphere of yellow light as she spoke. Sun Wen could catch a few at the start, but was quickly overwhelmed and guffawed. Help me, Yuao. Hua Yua could see everything from the moment Juzi raised her hands into the air. She was actually throwing out oranges. Every single one was ripe and supple. It was apparent that she was a food-type soul master with an orange martial soul. Hua Yua's movements were quite unlike Sun Wen. While neither released their martial soul, Hua Yua seemed to grow innumerable hands, catching every single orange barreling through the air. Not a single orange could get by him. He simply dropped them on the ground beside him. Hey! Juzi finally realized there was someone else in the lab. She stopped what she was doing and asked, who are you? Sun Wen walked towards Hua Yuao and explained, he is your new junior brother, and I will be mentoring him from today onwards. Hua Yuao was relatively tall and lanky compared to others of the same age. He had a cool and composed demeanor, so he seemed more like a teenager closer to 17 or 18 years old. Juzi waved at him indifferently before she rushed in front of Sun Wen angrily and said, you lied to me again, Teacher Sun. If you do that again, I'm going to request a change of teachers. Sun Wen chuckled and replied, is it my fault that you were born a glutton? Everything would be okay if you didn't react so dramatically. I leave you in charge of answering your junior brother's questions when I'm not around. His name is Hua Yuao. Hua Yuao stepped forward a bit rushed and said respectfully, nice to meet you, senior sister Juzi. Juzi looked him up and down more carefully than before, then muttered, I don't have time for that. I still have to continue researching and studying my own things. Anyways, I'm leaving to find something to eat. I'm famished. I haven't had anything to eat yet. She waved her hands as she spoke and departed the laboratory once more. Sun Wen explained sheepishly, our learning atmosphere is a little more relaxed. Juzi might seem reserved and isolated from her surroundings, but she has extraordinary talents with soul tools. She's already a class 5 soul engineer. The only thing she's lacking is cultivation level. Who are you? I suddenly thought of something and asked, I've seen many students from the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy before, and I noticed that they typically possess a very formidable soul power from a young age. Reaching rank 60 before 20 years of age isn't rare, is it? Have they achieved it by eating exotic foods or whatnot? That might be a little excessive. Sun Wen sighed and answered, they're spoiling them with undue haste. The Academy has employed some special and unnatural methods to aid students with a talent for forging soul tools, and the Academy spends a myriad amount of exotic foods and precious resources to boost their cultivations. This method has side effects, which will affect their future development. I can't tell you about that though, it's classified. Sun Wen quickly left, and Hua Yuao was the only person left inside the lab. Hua Yuao sat down on the ground cross-legged, and started meditating. He wasn't just trying to understand and consolidate the things he learned from Sun Wen, he was also trying to memorize the structure and formation arrays of the soul tools within the laboratory, but he didn't dare to draw them onto paper right now, as he wasn't quite sure if there wasn't a soul tool spying on him or monitoring his actions. He was about to head down to the canteen to eat after finishing up when the lab door opened again. Juzi was back. Senior sister Juzi. Hua Yuao was a little fatigued when he greeted Juzi. Juzi raised one hand and tossed a card that looked like it was made of crystal to Hua Yuao. Hua Yuao caught it. Juzi said, how troublesome. Teacher Sun wanted me to give you this access card. You'll be able to go in and out of the laboratory when you like with it. We don't really have any rules here, so you can carry on with your own research if you have any, and find Teacher Sun if you have something you don't understand. All right, I'm going to take a nap and continue my research in the afternoon. She yawned as she spoke. She turned and began walking towards the exit. She suddenly stopped after taking only a step or two and snapped her head around. Hua Yuao, right? How did you catch so many of my oranges a while ago? Hua Yuao answered, it's a technique from my sect. What sect are you from? Juzi asked curiously. The Tang sect. Hua Yuao replied. Juzi was a little confused and asked, I've never heard of it before. Is it fun? Hua Yuao felt a little speechless, but he still replied, a sect shouldn't be described as fun, senior sister. Juzi grunted and said, forget it, if it's not fun, I'm out. She pranced away just like that. Hua Yuao ate a simple lunch and returned to the lab in the early afternoon. Neither Sun Wen nor Juzi were around. He recalled Sun Wen's advice from the morning, and began to experiment with soul tools. He was trying to forge a commonplace, but extremely valuable, soul tool, a class 4 milk bottle. The milk bottle, and soul tools like it, were always in high demand. Only problem is that forging one is a troublesome process, with its formation arrays being especially sophisticated. Hua Yuao was experimenting in simplifying these complex formation arrays. After about 30 minutes of deep concentration, Juzi walked in. She wasn't too concerned to see Hua Yuao making a soul tool off to the side. She walked over to the other side of the lab desk and got down to work. She was also creating formation arrays. Hua Yuao's senses were incredibly perceptive. He was aware of her presence the moment she entered. He discreetly activated spiritual detection and monitored his senior sister's movements. Even with his good impression of Sun Wen, he still knew it would be difficult to pick up any core knowledge or bits and pieces of information, because he was from Shrek Academy. He had to learn whatever he could, however he could do it. Hua Yuao's first impression of Juzi was that she seemed cute. She was pretty too, but also ignorant and obnoxious. He quickly realized that Juzi was almost like a completely different person when she walked in. She was extraordinarily focused, as if without a care in the world for anything else besides the formation array she was forging at the moment. It was far more complicated than Hua Yuao's class 4 milk bottles formation array. Hua Yuao couldn't even tell what the formation array was for, despite his vast memory banks of formation arrays. Of course, this was also because Juzi had just started carving. Juzi appeared to enter a state of absolute concentration, as if she didn't realize that Hua Yuao was now right behind her. She grabbed a silver white piece of metal with her left hand while she held a carving knife with unique colors in her right. This knife looked like it was made of clear and transparent crystal, and its handle was an orangish red. The blade's hues gradually became lighter and more plain from the handle all the way up to the tip, which was so clear and transparent that it was almost invisible. The carving knife spun between her fingers and waltzed like a sphere of flame. Fan Wu had once remarked that different soul engineers had different preferences and varying carving knives when creating formation arrays. Those who would eventually become top-ranked soul engineers all had their own unique techniques and style. Hua Yuao was still discovering his own style and preferences. However, he could see fragments of a style from Juzi. Juzi gave onlookers a light and agile feeling when she handled her carving knife. The knife looked like a ball of flame, only briefly touching the metal piece before it was withdrawn, and didn't stop moving for even a single moment. This natural movement made it seem like she was caressing the metal piece with her carving knife. Metal scraps continuously drifted to the floor, but none of them scattered outwards. The intricate textures made her work seem like that of uncanny and superlative craftsmanship. One was sitting down while the other was standing up. One was carving in silence while the other observed quietly from the side. Like this, time unwittingly flew by. Dusk was gradually approaching. Warm lights automatically lit up inside the lab to maintain the brightness. However, neither Hua Yuan nor Juzi noticed these changes. One was focused on working, another was watching on, enchanted. Today's takeaways were almost overwhelming for Hua Yuan. He had received Sun Wen's guidance in Soul engineering principles this morning, but these several hours of standing during the afternoon were actually even more important. This was the optimal combination of theory and hands-on practice. Juzi was effectively giving him an exciting and magnificent practical lesson. It was especially effective because she was a form of confirmation for what Sun Wen had talked about in the morning. A new door to becoming a proper Soul engineer was slowly opening before Hua Yuan. Juzi heaved a long breath after a long time. Oh, it's finally done. The silver-white metal piece became a square formation array. The horizontal and vertical lines on the formation array were precise and orderly, and Hua Yuan wouldn't have believed it if you told him they were carved manually, without the help of any other tools. Had he not just seen it happen in person? Why didn't he use any other tools? Hua Yuan spoke for the first time after she finished her work. Juzi was clearly startled. Her body instantly erupted with orangish red radiance, and uncountable oranges were immediately flung towards Hua Yuan. The oranges whooshed through the air like they were shot out by a tornado. Hua Yuan didn't expect she would have such a violent reaction, but his battle instincts caused him to respond subconsciously. Diamond-like crystals covered his entire body, and the flurry of oranges crashed against him, but didn't even force him to take a single step back. The oranges ricocheted against the Ice Empress armor and scattered in different directions. Hua Yuan's pupils suddenly dilated as he felt more than 10 oranges soundlessly stick to his body, and he was assaulted with an unprecedented sense of danger. He made a split-second judgment due to his perceptive senses. Emerald light flickered as a shadow flashed behind his body. An emerald green layer of light blew outwards with his body at the center before being immediately withdrawn. Everything froze within an area of about 10 meters in diameter. Juzi had already turned around and was looking at Hua Yuan with an astonished look on her face. The whirling oranges in the sky just stopped and remained in a strange state of silence. The oranges rained down from above to the ground. They crackled like fireworks as they hit the floor, like they were rocks slamming into the ground. Hua Yuan first scanned his body. There were more than 10 oranges stuck to his Ice Empress armor, but they had all become small ice blocks, and their original effects were dispelled by his ultimate ice. He pinched one of them and realized that the orange's surface was soft and tender like an actual orange. He used his spiritual detection and discovered, to his intense fright and bewilderment, that this orange contained a complicated formation array that was no weaker than that of a class 4 soul tool, as well as a small energy gathering array. The soul power contained within it had been frozen luckily. If not, he couldn't even begin to imagine what would have happened. Without a doubt, her food-type martial spirit was just like her name, Orange. Her food-type martial soul didn't contain much offensive power, but was incredibly misleading. He would have suffered unimaginably had his senses not been adequately keen and perceptive. 10 class 4 soul tools detonating on his body at the same time. Not even his Ice Empress armor could have taken that. Of course, it was likely that Juzi would stop what she was doing when she realized it was him. However, Hua Yuan wouldn't gamble with his life over this. He shook his body, and the 10 oranges fell off. Hua Yuan used the controlling crane capturing dragon technique to grab them carefully before putting them on the lab desk some distance away. Hua Yuan placed his right hand on Juzi's shoulder, and the ultimate ice energy released by the domain of perpetual ice was slowly withdrawn. Juzi was a 5-ring Soul King, but it would have probably still taken her around 15 minutes to remove the effects on her own, and this was only when Hua Yuan used the domain of perpetual ice without much force in consideration of her safety. It's so cold. Juzi shivered, and her charming figure quivered slightly before she sat back down. Her red and supple lips were turning blue, and the infuriated expression in her eyes held a tinge of fright. What were you thinking? Juzi exclaimed angrily. Hua Yuan forced a laugh and said, I would not have acted like that if you didn't react so violently. Juzi grunted angrily and pointed a finger at Hua Yuan's nose. Just you wait. She took the newly finished formation array as she spoke and stormed out. Hua Yuan stroked his nose. He felt as exasperated. He had never intended to offend his senior sister, but he couldn't possibly be expected not to retaliate in that kind of situation. He didn't think too much about it. The sky was getting darker by the minute. After eating something light at the canteen, he returned to the dormitory and immediately started meditating. Hua Yuan's meditation process was different from that of normal soul masters. After obtaining his second spiritual seed, Hua Yuan realized that he could separate a strand of consciousness to think about things while he cultivated. This was undoubtedly a great increase to his intellect and ability to grasp concepts. This was how things were. He had absorbed voluminous amounts of knowledge, even though it was only the first day, and he needed time to fuse what he learned today with the things he already knew. Also, he could better understand the most advanced soul tool engineering principles. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Over these few days, Hua Yuan received Sun Wen's meticulous guidance on principles and concepts. Even though he hadn't attempted to forge another soul tool yet, he obtained a fresh mind, full of knowledge about soul tools. However, he didn't see Juzi again after the first day, as if she'd just vanished into thin air. On the morning of the 4th day, Hua Yuan arrived early and started cleaning up the lab once he arrived. He'd been doing this since the 2nd day. He cleaned every lab until it was spotless, and then awaited Sun Wen's arrival. He was halfway through cleaning when the lab door suddenly shut open. Hua Yuan was wondering why Teacher Sun was coming so early in the morning when 4 people stepped in from outside. One of them being Juzi. A tall and burly youth stood in front of the group. He was at least 2 meters tall, and his muscular body rivaled that of Hikato. Even his skin was dark and tanned. Darker skin was an aristocratic sign within the Sun Moon Empire. This muscular youth's hair was brown and short. His eyes sparkled with vitality, and his bulging muscles stretched his uniform tightly. A tiny girl with a small figure stood behind him. She wasn't as beautiful as Juzi, but she had a cute charm, and was only about 160 centimeters tall. Her eyes were full of life and ferocity, and even contained a tinge of intimidation. The third person was male, and he had a tall and slim figure. He was a little taller than Hua Yuan, had long flowing golden hair reached past his shoulders. His nose was high and sharp. His blue eyes were deep yet lively, and his handsome features were complementary with Juzi's behind him. Hua Yuan immediately stopped what he was doing when they walked in, and he said respectfully, "Nice to see you again, senior sister Juzi. You guys must be my senior brothers and sisters. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Hua Yuan, and I'm a new exchange student." He barely finished his sentence when the tiny girl's shrill voice rang out. Enough with all that formality. We aren't your senior brothers and sisters. Did we let you call us that? She walked towards Hua Yuan as she spoke, her hands planted on her waist, carrying a truculent and overbearing demeanor. Hua Yuan smiled and said, "Then how should I address you?" The tiny girl was stunned momentarily, and her fierce mannerisms fell apart instantly. "Let's not talk about that first. Who allowed you into the lab?" "Teacher Sun, of course." Hua Yuan replied, amused. The tiny girl grunted and said, "We haven't agreed to that. This is a shared study area. Follow me outside for a while. I want to ask you something." She pointed towards the door as she spoke. "Why?" Hua Yuan asked doubtfully. The tiny girl said, "Come out and you'll know." She took the lead and headed outside as she spoke. Hua Yuan didn't know what she was going to do, but, judging from her attitude, it probably wasn't anything good. However, he didn't want to antagonize his senior brothers and sisters in his first few days here, so he followed the tiny girl outside. The other 3 gazed at him expressionlessly. It was clear that they were ostracizing him. The tiny girl walked out of the lab and pointed towards a wall by the corridor. "Stand over there." Hua Yuan followed her instructions and asked, "What do you want to say to me?" The tiny girl grunted coldly and replied, "I want to tell you that you aren't worthy enough to enter the lab without our permission. Next time you do, we'll beat you up. Do you understand?" Hua Yuan's brows creased. He wanted to say something, but the young girl swiftly took a step back and into the laboratory and shut the door behind her. Hua Yuan possessed impressive self-restraint and composure, but he couldn't help but feel indignant. He hurriedly stepped forward to use the access card hanging at his chest to swipe at the door, while he prepared to reason with them inside. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.